Hey guys, it's Chris. From aircraft with curious ways to take off, to ones that shouldn't seem to be able to fly at all. Join me as I show you 9 of the most bizarre modern aircraft ever made. Number 9. NASA AD-1. If you didn't know already, the process of making an aircraft of any kind is a really long one. For while something may look good on paper, when you build it and you test it out, unforeseen problems can arise. And sometimes you just need to test things out for yourself. Which brings us to the bizarre aircraft known as the NASA AD-1. This particular aircraft wasn't made to be a commercial flyer, or a military vehicle, or anything like that. In fact, it was a tool of scientific purpose. One to test certain things about flight, as the wing of the plane isn't perfectly horizontal with the craft, and that's intentional. They did this plane to test out how far a rigid wing shape could move before the plane started losing stability. This revelation, of which the answer is 60 degrees by the way, can help form the basis of new aircraft, as well as push the knowledge of aircraft mechanics, sometimes that has been going on for decades. The NASA AD-1 was tested over the course of 79 flights, even going so far as to move the orientation of the wing in flight. This revealed that at certain angles that weren't perpendicular, the speed of the plane was faster than normal. However, upon trying to fit this concept into a bigger plane, the team ran into issues, and the concept was ultimately scrapped and the NASA AD-1 was retired. Number 8. Gruman X29. The use of experimental planes has been a process that has yielded some rather odd or curious-looking aircraft, including in 1984 when the Gruman X29 was built. Without a doubt, the biggest thing that people noticed about this plane was that the wings were facing the opposite direction that they should have, meaning that instead of rear-facing wings helped to ensure lift, the Gruman X29 had front-facing wings, which gives a partial illusion that the aircraft has been built backwards, when in fact, that was the intention. The design was very carefully constructed, and the point of the aircraft was rather simple. It was believed that this jet plane could handle greater turns and speeds because of its forward-facing wings. Whether that was true, though, depends on who you speak to. Most from NASA and the Air Force didn't believe this, mainly because the aircraft had an inherent instability problem, one that forced a computer to make 40 corrections per second just to keep the craft in the air. In the end, only 2 of these aircraft were built before flight testing was stopped. Number 7. V22 Osprey. Many aircraft with bizarre forms or features rarely get used in the world today. But a good example of one that still does is called the Osprey. This particular kind of aircraft is known as a VTOL, or Vertical Takeoff and Landing Craft. But if you look at it, you'll notice that it can look like a plane or a helicopter, when in fact, it's both and kinda neither. When in helicopter form, the Osprey can take off vertically, thus not needing the momentum of a standard takeoff in order to generate lift and get into the air. Then, when it's ready, it can change forms and go into a more standard plane-style mode to do basic flights, which, to be clear, it does while it's already in the air. The plane has had many uses over the years, including being a plane to deploy paratroopers. It's very versatile, and many different versions of it have been made over the years. As for its origins, it was created in response to a failed mission in Iran known as Operation Eagle Claw. The military needed a vertical takeoff craft with better range and higher speeds. The V22 Osprey delivered that. And now for number 6, but first, be sure to subscribe to World List before you go, and let me know your favorite bizarre aircraft in the comments. Number 6. Sikorsky Xwing. Not to be confused with the legendary ship from Star Wars, the Sikorsky Xwing was an offshoot of the Sikorsky S-72 hybrid aircraft. The team at Sikorsky were famous for being able to blend the style of airplanes with the blades of helicopters, and the Sikorsky Xwing was one of the results of that. The intention of this bizarre aircraft was to bring together the best of both flying worlds, to create a fully functional aircraft that could fly either like a helicopter or a plane should the need arise. To that end, the Sikorsky Xwing was able to take off vertically like a helicopter, and then when in mid-flight, it could disengage the rotor, so the wings of the plane could do their own work via lift. There was even an air compression system built into the engine and blades that would allow the wings to get more lift when needed. DARPA and others were very interested in this aircraft's design, but in the end, the program that helped fund it was shut down, and a plane like it has not been created since. likely due to its rather odd design and function. Number 5. Lockheed Martin P791. The idea of having a fusion kind of aircraft is not a new concept by any means, mainly because engineers see the potential of fusing the potential of one kind of craft with another to see what works. For example, blimps and similar kinds of airships were very popular once upon a time, but they weren't known for speed. So in the 2000s, the Lockheed Martin P791 was created to have the space of a blimp, but the speed of an airplane. The shape of the finished product is truly unlike any blimp or aircraft before it, and one of the reasons for that was that it was built to land on its bottom, versus tying itself to a building or other tower like most blimps had to. Furthermore, the way the weight of the craft is spaced out helps to ensure lift. Just as important though, like a blimp, the Lockheed Martin P791 was built to stay in the air for a very long time. And according to Lockheed themselves, they believed that they could keep their craft in the air at 20,000 feet for 3 weeks uninterrupted, and the craft is still in use today. Number 4. Goodyear INFLATOPLANE. When you hear the name Goodyear, you no doubt think of the legendary tire company that is still around today. But at one time, they did dabble in making experimental airplanes. But their invention of the inflatoplane was a bit bizarre and precious for it to be used effectively. To be clear, the design of the plane shape-wise was fine. It was able to fly. But there was a major catch that hindered it. Mainly, it was made entirely out of fabric. All of it. You could literally inflate it and go, hence the name. On a technical level, it's quite an achievement, and Goodyear had a brilliant idea on how to use these planes. They were going to use them as rescue craft. If a pilot went down, which has happened many times over the various eras, a support plane would drop the inflatoplane down to them so they could get out without risking more lives. The problem was that if any part of that plane got poked and a hole was made, the plane was pretty much useless. For this reason, the military scrapped the project in 1972, despite over 15 years of testing and trying to make it work. Number 3. NASA Hyper 3. For most aircraft, the most important thing to get when designing one is lift. Without lift, you won't get off the ground. NASA decided to take this approach in a new direction during the 1960s with a series of flat-body planes, one of the most famous of which was the NASA Hyper 3. What's interesting, though, was that this type of aircraft was designed to not be flown by a person within it, but by remote control. This is a precursor to the unmanned aircraft drones that are used all the time today. And you'll notice there's no cockpit on this plane, and that's by design. The wing design was also intentionally kept simple, so the plane had the bare minimum need to fly and be effective. What's odd, though, is that after one flight in 1969 that was successful by all accounts, the program behind it shut down, and it was never flown again. Number 2. Aero Jelly. Not all aircraft are big to start. Many do scale models in order to show off what they can do. The Aero Jelly is very special in that regard. It's a small flying machine that isn't much larger than your hand that you hold it in. However, one of the biggest things that separates this particular craft from others is that it doesn't have an engine. It flies by flapping its 4 wings in an atypical pattern. This was an intentional design by the Aero Jelly's creator, Leif Ristroff, who wanted to look at how flapping flight worked in the large scale. "My lab is interested in studying aerodynamics and flapping wing flight," said Ristroff, "and I was trying to design something that was stable without any sort of feedback." He notes that while engine flight may be more dominant in construction of planes, flapping flight can lead to questions and answers that these planes don't allow. You get this unusual effect where flapping leads to these swirls of air that launch off the wing, and the wings can interact with each other, which is challenging. Whether a full-scale version of this aircraft can be made is unknown. As for the name, it's a reference to a certain kind of flying jellyfish, which the wings and flapping motion were modeled after. Number 1. Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird. If you look at the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, you might recognize it from a place other than the real world. This is because the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird is a plane that looks very similar to the X-Jet seen in the X-Men movies, especially the more recent ones like First Class. And there's a good reason they used this model to be the flagship of the X-Men. Because the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was meant to be a stealth ship as well as be fast. The technical definition of the Blackbird was that it was a long-range, high-altitude Mach 3 strategic reconnaissance aircraft, one that was used in the United States Air Force up until 1998. The intent was to be used for spying on enemies, and then getting out of there when things got confrontational. The unique design was to both allow for high speeds and maneuverability, including having to potentially outrace missiles should the need arise. To that end, the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird was never downed in combat. As for why it's odd, well, it honestly ties into the comic book side of things, as it looks like something drawn out of a comic book. It doesn't look like standard fighter planes. It's sleek and curved and unique. It's special. That being said, while it was very good at its job, it eventually became obsolete in the wake of spy satellites and unmanned drones, though rumors of a potential successor have been floating around for years. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these bizarre aircraft? Do you know of any other bizarre aircraft that could have been on this list? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to World List, and I'll see you next time.